Good afternoon, everyone. It is 5 o'clock on Monday, August 10th, 2026, and I am calling the regular Wausau School District Board of Education meeting to order. Ms. Gabriel, will you perform the roll call, please?
Seamus Boucher?
Yes.
Sarah Brock?
Here.
Charles Berger?
Here.
John Kreischer? Nick Rochier?
Here.
Patrick McKee?
Yes.
Corey Silvers?
Here.
Lance Strala?
He is here virtually.
And Yao Yang?
Here.
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, please stand and join me in the reciting of the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
It is the mission of the Wausau School District to advance student learning, achievement, and success. And moving right along to agenda item 5, this is for public and student comment. And if I could have the list, please. Greatly appreciate it. And as I'm getting the list, I'm just going to state what I always state before we have the open consent area or the open community mic. With that, I would like to recognize speakers and students who wish to make public comments. But before we do, here are a couple of reminders. The board recognizes the value of public comment and on additional issues, educational issues, and the importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on district matters. The president reserves the right to stop speakers from continuing if names, positions are referred to or inappropriate language used. Please identify yourself by name and state your address. Each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 3 minutes in duration. Ms. Gabriel will identify the time remaining. And with that, our first person to speak to us is Ann Wickland. And I believe the red light is on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the one that she got to read. Yeah, she got to step on.
There you go.
All right, thank you. Good evening. My name is Ann Wickland. I live at 227350 Bard Owl Avenue, Wausau, right down from Rib Mountain School. And I am here today to discuss my concerns about the first grade classroom at Rib Mountain School, projected with 25 in their first grade class. I come to you asking, first of all, do you remember kindergarten or first grade? Do any of you remember that? Remember your teacher? Most people do. Most people remember starting school. It's a pivotal time of life. I come to you not only as a grandmother that has volunteered at Rib Mountain School, but a woman with over 50 years of experience in early childhood education. I graduated from Wausau West, went on to UW-Madison, received my degree in speech pathology, and started working in a preschool program. I spent almost my whole career in early childhood education. I worked as a speech pathologist in numerous early childhood programs. And when I left the state, came back to Wisconsin, I worked at DC Everest, and from there as a speech pathologist in early childhood. Went back for my administrative degree. The Wausau School District hired me as our coordinator of early childhood special ed, speech language, and deaf hard of hearing. I soon became principal at the Kiefer Center, which was home to ESL preschool and early childhood special ed. From there, I became the assistant director of special education and then the director of special education. I retired from that position in 2009, have done work since that time, but primarily volunteer. And when my grandsons, Oliver and Owen, began school at Rib Mountain, I started volunteering there. I've enjoyed it tremendously. Let me get started that early childhood is pre-K through grade 3. That is what all the literature supports as early childhood education. Not everybody knows that it goes up to age 8 or 3rd grade. My key message is that over the years, practices have changed, theories have changed. What has never changed is the importance of class size on early learning. page 2. First grade is so much more than academics. Children are developing reading and writing skills, math foundations, classroom routines, self-regulation, social skills, positive learning behaviors. Young children need frequent teacher interaction, feedback, encouragement, and individualized attention during this critical year. The concern is a combination of class size and student needs. This is the most important point. We understand there is a wide range of academic abilities in this classroom. There are students with significant learning and behavioral needs. Different students require different levels of support. A large class makes it harder for one teacher to provide that individualized attention.
I think I'm going to have to cut you off.
Did I take too long on my introduction?
You were I tried to give you a minute more on this to get to the introduction, but I shan't do that. So thank you for your presentation. You're part of
I even
it.
rehearsed it, so I wouldn't go over.
Sorry about that.
Very good.
Picking up the baton, I'm going to call for Nate Bartz to come up.
Good afternoon, Board. My name is Nate Bartz. Address is 151306 Kingfisher Lane in Rib Mountain. I'm the parent of 2 students at Rib Mountain Elementary, and I'm speaking on behalf of many Rib Mountain families who share the same concern that I do. First off, to begin with appreciation to the board, administration, and staff. This has been ongoing probably since last April, so I'm appreciative of your time, dialogue, and the information that has been exchanged. And I know that these staffing decisions are a difficult fiscal responsibility and, quite honestly, a complicated puzzle that needs to be solved. Our core point is not whether Rib Mountain falls within a district guideline. Our concern is not how enrollment compares to district averages that are school-wide. And our concern is really what those numbers mean for K1 and 2s. Rib Mountain is different. Right now, they are projected to be a single section K1 and 2, and a 1-section grade has absolutely zero flexibility. There's no balancing with behaviors, with additional supports that are needed. There's no help if a challenge arises and a teacher or teachers need to shift students between different classrooms for an afternoon. Looking at solely just a number as a cap doesn't consider composition for our students, which directly aligns with the school district's mission of student learning, achievement, and success. And just saying that there's 24 in that class is falling short of your mission. This is a bigger picture, and we appreciate that. I acknowledge that it's a broader district-wide conversation, and that I think we can all acknowledge that today's classrooms are entirely more complex than when those guidelines were created. We do support reviewing those guidelines, but our concern is immediate in that kindergarten, first grade, and second grade only get one chance, one opportunity to go through those critical building years of their elementary. As we've talked about, Jim and I were actually just talking about this, when it comes to IP or APA classes, if those kids don't get a sound fundamental foundation for their learning careers, they're not going to love school and they're not going to grow to their fullest potential. These are functional years for learning and development, and we need to be dialed into those now. I would ask the Rib Mountain families to stand, but I think it's just about everyone sitting behind me, so if they all want to give a wave. So our direct ask is what action can be done today, now, for the 2026-2027 school year to ensure that our students, our teachers, and all the admin in that building are getting the support that they need. I realize it's not a simple yes-no answer, that a solution is complex and difficult, but we're asking for action, not just acknowledgement. We realize that it's not going to be perfect, but we're asking the board and district administration to put the students first, to put the teachers first, and to put the families first. Rib Mountain is a coveted place. It's a great school. I'm an alum of it, and I feel very strongly about it, even more so when my children are involved, and want to see a solution that is something other than triage, and that is, moving the needle forward in a meaningful manner. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Jess Bartz.
I thought that was the sign-in sheet.
Did you want to talk
So,
to us?
so you don't want to speak?
I'm good.
Good. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for the 2 presentations, appreciate that. Okay. I hated to put you on the spot there, but I always want to make sure. Agenda item 6, we're looking at the approving of the consent agenda. Appointments, additional staff, replacement staff, contract increases, separations, resignations, contract decreases, terminations, leaves of absence, retirements, minutes from the regular session of July 13th, 2026, special session of August 3rd, and 2026, and board workshop on August 3rd, 2026. Payment of bills, budget status, and investment report, donations to the district by Lynn Miller, Nikki O'Neill, and anonymous donor. I'm seeking a motion to approve the consent agenda with great gratitude for donations to the district.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried. Sorry about that, Lance. I will slow down on that so that we do get your vote in. Appreciate it. I heard you at the end. Old recurring business, Education Operations Committee meeting. There is no old business at this time. Education Operations Committee meeting, referendum, 2022 construction updates. Nexus will provide updates for current referendum projects at John Marshall, Rib Mountain, Franklin, and Lincoln. So, you're on. Gentlemen, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on with our brief presentation that we have for everyone. I'd like to say that the construction is going very well. There's always a few things that we are working through at all times to ensure that we're getting our schools available and open. Big thing for next week is that we have our occupancy inspections that are going to be occurring. We have final inspections this week to button up most of our rooms and be able to get people in the buildings. So our first slide up there shows one of the large cranes that were on site to move some of the new HVAC equipment and replace that. So that is completed outside of one unit that is coming in a little bit later next week that we anticipate a hookup on there. Next slide shows our progress on our new roof that is substantially complete outside of a few detailing items. Next slide, moving on there, shows a bunch of the structural reinforcement. That turned out to be quite a challenge, working within the old building and finding all kinds of new scenarios that we had to work through. So we worked through on those. Slide on the bottom left shows one of our new classrooms with the new ceilings, lights, and buried above it is the HVAC that you can see in the slide to the right with new piping and components above the ceilings. So at Marshall there, all demolition is completed. Structural steel is completed for the reinforcements, and the majority of the classrooms are turned over where they can start being final cleaned, which a lot of that final cleaning has already taken place, and we're just starting to stock it now with items for the school year. Work in progress, I mentioned the one rooftop air handler. We will have that to set yet this week or next week. Continuing our room turnovers as we can finish our inspections. We put our last ceiling tiles in and then turn it over to the cleaners or school staff. And then our front entry security, we have the aluminum storefront coming in both this week and next week, along with the fire alarms, and finishing up with our corridor ceilings. And then we have a little bit of site work that is finishing up to where we're patching in where the new utilities came in. But as far as school turnover. All the classrooms have grid. I mean, I'm just looking at some of my notes since I put this together last week, and we had a lot of items that have finished up in the meantime. So all the classrooms have grid in there. The grid work will be finishing up this week in the hallways, and then, like I said, most classrooms are turned over and are being cleaned. Moving to Franklin and Rib Mountain, there was another large crane in place that we needed to set some of the HVAC equipment, including the new chiller, which is in place right now. The enclosure is underway. We have masons working there. It'll be completed within the next couple days, so that block and brick will be completed at that location. Moving on to the next top right slide shows what the new corridor view looks like with completed ceiling and lights in there. Bottom left, one of the classrooms with grid and new lights in, just waiting for some of these rooms. We just had to finish up closing a couple electrical boxes, and then we can pad that out. That'll be finished up with our inspections this week. And then that bottom right shows the new sped area that is, it was the stage area, and that wall from that picture, it is all painted out and has finishes on it already. So another item that is completed is our roofing over there with, again, a few of the detailing items remaining. And our second story is fully complete there. The first story south classrooms are fully complete. The east classrooms are in the process of being turned over. And then we're just working down the west corridor and through our offices with anticipated turnovers at the end of the week. Ventilation is 100% on first and second floors outside of a few final connections at air handlers. And then our work in progress is we're working through the remainder of the ceilings, like I said, in the west side, and then finishing up in our corridors on the first floor. Flooring and tile is going in this week. They're finishing up in the bathrooms with the tile right now. Flooring is scheduled to take place in the new secure entries and the sped areas. Chiller piping, we're making our final connections to the chiller yet. We're piped out through the building or right to the building edge, and it'll just drop down to the exterior chiller. And then mechanical startups are scheduled for the end of this week and into next week. So everything's going well.
Well, Chris is on leader. This is Chris Led, manager. I'm Kevin Hickman, our vice president. So thanks for having us back. We just wanted to quickly finish up. We were reflecting a couple weeks ago, Chris and I were just on the 12-year relationship we've had with the district. Obviously, a lot of listening happened during that time, planning and then delivering, as Chris is talking about. We appreciate the collaboration, so thank you so much for that. Cornerstone of that was obviously the large investment the community approved. It's now wrapping up implementation, and really led to safer schools, renewed infrastructure, and improved environments for students and staff. Thanks to the community and the board. So, just wanted to end by saying we're sincerely grateful for that partnership, and especially the leadership of Kale and Ryan and Dr. Elizabeth. Oh, there she is. Sorry, I missed you there. So, and of course the school board, and just how proud we are and grateful of that positive impact we've had in terms of the partnership. So thank you very much, everyone. Any questions we can answer for you?
I was going to open it up to the board. Questions for the gentleman?
Yeah, just one quick one, and this maybe is just a message for you guys. Who runs Nexus now? Is that Mike guy still there?
Well, Mike's our president. He's one of 3 owners, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Just to help, it would have been nice to hear from him over the last 8 or 9 years. The last time we heard from him, he was in front of us threatening us with legal action. Mm-hmm. And now that the $120 million is gone, I just thought it would have been a decent touch over the years if he would have showed his face up here again and given us an update face to face after all that happened. So,
Pat, I'll take that back to him and let him know
you.
that. Yes, absolutely.
We have new people on the board. I'd like to open it up to you guys if you have any questions for Nexus at this point in time.
Looks fantastic.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks, Jim.
I would like to add, though, that The custodial staff at these schools is second to none. They're some of the best that I've ever worked with. They're very hard workers, and they're pleasant to work with. We're trying to, get through these schools, get everything cleaned up, and the staff that you have on board is second to none. So just so that I just wanted to express my appreciation there.
Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate you being here.
Yes.
Okay, still on new business, agenda item 8, 8C. The administration will give a brief presentation on district class sizing. And it's probably not going to be brief. I'll just forewarn you. I think we'll have some questions in that. So, whoever's taking over, go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for giving myself and Dr. Channel an opportunity to speak on elementary class size guidelines tonight. On the first page, I just want to share our objectives, provide an overview of classroom staffing practices and considerations, and engage the board in discussion and direction for future considerations. On this slide, you can see the current elementary class size practices that we currently have in the district. In kindergarten and first grade, we have a maximum of 25 students. In second and third grade, we have a maximum of 27. In grades fourth and fifth grade, we have a maximum of 29. The 18 is for our AGR schools. So kindergarten through third grade in 3 of our schools, Franklin, Jefferson, and Jones, the maximum is 18 in kindergarten through third grade because they are our AGR schools. Once that maximum capacity is reached in any of our classes, we add a enrollment paraprofessional to each of those classes if they meet the maximum number of students. This is some data over 6 years of average class sizes.
Katie,
Sorry.
I think I'm on now. One of the things I just wanted to point out, so the paraprofessional edition, we've commonly referred to that as a third Friday para, where we wait until the third Friday count to see how many kids we had into the district, and that's when the para would get added. That's one of the changes to our practices that we're utilizing this year. We feel like we can make a pretty good assumption as to what the classes are going to be, and really feel like those first 3 weeks are so instrumental as kids transition into the school that we want to add that para before the school year starts, so they're in the classroom right away.
Just a quick clarifying question. Mine works better than yours does. Okay. When you said if max is reached, a para is added. So looking at these, so does that mean at 25, 27, and 29, a para is added, but at 24, 26, and 28, there is not a para?
Correct.
And if we're at 26, 28, or 30, the class is split?
It depends on where we have movement in the district. So if there's a school that has open spots available, we can district place into that school. And that slide is coming up.
Perfect.
All right, moving on. This slide is the average class size over the last 6 years. And as you can see, there's a couple things that I just want to note. The smaller class sizes, as you can see in 22, 23, and then 23, 24 was 7 and 5. Those are outliers, but they also contribute to that overall average class size of 19.3 and 18.8. Hewitt, Texas had those class sizes of 7 and 5 prior to moving to a combo class in first and second grade in 24-25. With the exception of Hewitt, Texas, the smallest class sizes were at our AGR schools, which again have that maximum of 18 students in kindergarten through third grade. Consolidation, when that occurred in 25, 26, and 26 and 27 this upcoming school year, that really increased those efficiencies within our schools, resulting in consistent class sizes across the district. The next slide just shows you the line graph for the data that was in the previous slide. So just kind of an overview of what that looks like over the course of those years. This is an average class size by building. So along the x-axis, you can see all of the schools listed, and then the colors represent the years. And if you note, the number behind each of the elementary schools is that current enrollment for each of those schools. So it's pretty tiny. I can read them if you'd like. Franklin is 288, Jones is 441, Marshall is 308, Maine is 230, Rib 175, Riverview 414, South 228, Statine 302, and Jefferson 446. This is just the same data, but we put it in a line graph for you. So if you remember, the district average currently for the upcoming year is 20.2. We have 3 schools above that average, Stettin, Riverview, and Marshall. And we have 6 schools below that class size average of 20.2. This is just some other helpful information we thought we would share. Staffing allocations are evaluated each spring based on enrollment, and adjustments are made depending on changes throughout the summer. Enrollments are monitored throughout the year to help guide conversations about sections for the following school year. And the elementary task force utilized current class size practices throughout consolidation in an attempt to balance class size enrollments throughout the district.
May I just add, as we're continuing to go through this slideshow, if you have questions, I think we should ask the questions at that point, because of the fact this is an information period of time where we're getting this information, and if there are any questions from board members, let's take a pause and ask the question. Okay. So otherwise, we're just going to rattle right through it, and I want to ruminate over it. I think you do too. Think about what's being presented. So. Okay.
Would you mind, just based on Jim's point, could we go back and look at the not the line graph, but the bar graph? Yes, the bar graph, that one. Just want to take a minute and look a little bit closer at that. I'll take a picture so I can refer back to it. I know, I don't have my school issued iPads with me.
We will slow down.
Good, thank you. Just want that in front of me as we go through everything. Thank you.
Okay, so as Sarah had mentioned, when we consider looking at those number of students in our sections and at what point do you decide on determining an additional section for schools or district placing students, so there's lots of things to consider. So we listed some of those for you, as we do not like to district place our kids. But when we're looking at that option, we check for student enrollment, physical space inside the school, and it's a surrounding school. So if Stettin is full, what's the next school closest to Stettin or has available space for a student? We review those in-district transfer requests, because we always have families that do in-district transfer requests. We consider siblings if they're already attending that school and that trajectory of enrollment and impact on the family. So we don't want to split our siblings up. Keeping them together is really important. And then, of course, the overall budget situation. So if we district place, we're adding costs to our busing. So that would be something that we have to consider when looking at district placement as well.
And let me add to that and just kind of couple off of what, Sarah, you had said about the idea of, let's say that you have 26 kids in a classroom and you have a section. At that point, the decisions guide, it's going to be, do we split that class into 2, or do you district place one student into a different building someplace else? And so we've really been, district placement isn't something we want. We don't want to do that. It happens more than we like it to.
Just having been a head of school in another state, this is one of the hardest things to do when it comes to enrollment in classes, because unfortunately each student has a cost and a benefit. Obviously there are a lot more than that, but you can't, once you get 2 over, splitting does not pay for that whole second body, another teacher. So you're always kind of balancing that. And obviously the primary focus should be the success of the students, but it's the success of all of our students. And so to me, this was always one of the hardest things to figure out, is balancing it's not a surprise, and Lance talks about, I'm going to throw Lance under a bus because he's not here, but he always talks about the importance of class size, and he brings it up multiple meetings every single year, so I know I'm not putting words in anybody's mouth. And nobody at these tables disagrees with this, but at the same time, we're balancing that with a finite amount of money that is literally dropping every year as inflation goes up and funding does not. So this is an incredibly challenging discussion to have, and I'm happy to see that you're looking at all of these different considerations. district placement, as Mr. Bushman says, is never a goal. You never want to tell a family that their choice is to be in an overcrowded classroom or go to a different school. That's a crappy choice to ask anybody to make. Yeah, there's no magic bullet here. So I'm really glad we're having this conversation, and I just want to really appreciate all the parents that are in the audience, and I'm sure I'm speaking for all of us, that you took the time to be here and understand how important this is, and to Mr. Bartz, who understands the challenges that are facing us as well. If this was an easy solution, it'd be done. So we thank you for the dialogue. So yeah, please keep going. Thank you.
Well, Lance, are you there? I don't want to.
I am here, yeah.
Okay, I don't want to throw you
got
under the bus, but would you like to say something at this point as you're following?
Yeah, one point on one of the slides, or a couple of the slides that showed our averages over the last 5 years. I think it's not really a question, but I think it's worth emphasizing that it's basically been flat. Just worth pointing that out because there was a recent media article, sort of previewing this meeting, and the title referenced that Wausau School District class sizes hit the highest in 6 years, and that's true, but it's less than one student higher than our second highest. So I just think it's worth pointing out or emphasizing that if people are looking at that and saying, "Oh my gosh, the class size average has gone way up," well, it hasn't. It's within one. So I wish they were smaller always, but there hasn't been a significant change.
Thanks, Lance. You want to continue?
Well, one note to tailor off Lance is when you look at scaling models where you just consolidated schools, it's going to assume that you just increased enrollment if you're looking at class size, but you're not. We're clearly not, as falling enrollment rates. So just as you do that and consolidate over time, or hopefully in the future you grow, but you're going to see a peak and then tailor down, you'll see a peak. So it's not whatever that article was is very kind of dissuading you from what's really going on.
Just one more point on that too. When we consolidate the class sizes, one of the things we pointed out is that it wouldn't greatly impact our average class size. But one thing it does do when we consolidate schools is when we have schools with multiple sections is you get fewer outliers. So you don't have those really small class sizes like we saw at Hewitt now and then, and you don't have the really large class sizes often because it's just easier to even it out over 2 or 3. If you have a one-section school like Rib Mountain was mentioned, you can have a bubble that comes through, and it's might only be 2 or 3 students, but it's really hard to deal with because we can't just create another classroom. But yet it results in a large class. If you had 2 or 3 sections, you'd just spread those 2 or 3 students out over 3 sections, and it would be easy to deal with.
So as we were looking at just all of our previous guidelines, we decided to explore just another scenario. So before we talked about a 25, 27, 29. So pulled some data to look at what a 21, 23, 25 would look like. With our enrollment for the 26, 27 school year, we would need to add 8 sections at various schools to accommodate. We would have a total of 17 students as of when we pulled the data that would need to be displaced to other schools. The cost for staffing is focused on the classroom teachers we would need, the encore staff that we would need to add in order to accommodate the additional sections, is about $1.1 million. And potential cost for busing, I put contingent because that is all determined based off of where students live and what school buildings they would be going to. And that's why I just put contingent there. So there would be a cost to making that shift. And on the next slide, just for a reminder of our fiscal reality, over the last 6 years, we've had to cut $1.6 million, $1.3 million from our budget in order for us to balance our budget. Keeping in mind that when we talk about a balanced budget, I'm not talking about deferred maintenance that is always lingering out there. But currently, we're projected to still need to cut $1.36 million for the 27-28 school year. So just information for you to have where we've been and what we've done. And you have seen as a board what we've cut in the past. We've cut staffing. Some of that is just natural attrition. Some of that was just right-sizing things once we consolidated. We've also taken percentages off of district budgets, building budgets, department budgets in order for us to balance that. And then the board voted to move all of the middle school sports to Fund 80 to help with our budget too. So you've done wonderful things to help us get into a healthier place with our budget, but this is just information so that you know where we've been.
One of the things I might add to that as well is through the consolidation process, we found financial savings. Like we've saved an X dollar amount by doing that. So when you look at a 26, 27, that's a reduced number from where it would have been had we not consolidated. So it says 1.69. It would have been 3.5 or something along those lines, just for clarification.
Also, the last slide shows eight new sections, right? And staff. I didn't realize we had all that room. Physical classrooms.
We have some room in some buildings, but it is very limited in other buildings because we've done a really great job of filling in the space with that consolidation.
And when we had this discussion 3 years ago, I had suggested to Dr. Hiltz about the fact that the interventionists that we had in place at that time, and one was at RIB, were showing results. And if you don't have the classroom space, then you should be adding the staff, as I've been asking for. And the discussion that Kayla and I had with some of the staff during visits last year, he's taken it to heart, which I wonderful, because the little kids need the most help right away to get them adjusted to their new environment, especially if they're not one of our 4K kids, right? So adding the paras, adding whatever additional staff the younger grades need, I've been asking about that for 3 years. So, I mean, I would be in favor of whatever they need as a temporary thing, as I had suggested to Dr. Hiltz. But none of that seemed to happen because we always have red lines on our budget. So I realize everything that we go through and talk about and the cuts and the adjustments and the efficiencies, but we're kind of getting to a point where we're going to spend some fund balance and not have a balanced budget, or you're going to make some other serious curriculum changes or programming changes in order to make a philosophical switch of how we're educating kids.
Can I piggyback on Corey's for a minute? Because do you have information in here regarding paras and support staff in those classrooms? Numbers of paras, at what point we bring them in? 1.1 million with a deficit of 1.36 million feels like an impossibility. Is there a different number that we could look at to get some more adult bodies in some of these classrooms that are close to the max, giving additional support without, at a lower salary cost, I guess is. Do we know how many of these rooms have paras?
I don't have the exact number, and I'm not sure if Tabitha does either. Yes. But
Well, Tabby, you look like you were rocking there, like you wanted to add something.
I have the information.
I checked the body language there.
So she just can't see that because I'm immediately behind her. So our paraeducators, we do have paraeducators that are staffed within the school, and we have them for a number of different areas, and they're allocated based on each area. So, for example, we provide a base level of regular education paras at each building. they get a baseline plus some additional allocation of hours according to their student enrollment in their building. What that does is it allows us to have an equitable distribution. If you have a building of 434, you're going to need students, you're going to need far more para support for their lunchroom supervision, their recess supervision, their classroom supports, all of those things. And so we have like a calculation process that we go through, and we do allocations based on that. If a building drops students, then there's a decrease made for the following school year, and that's in an hours increment. If a building grows, they get additional allocation. So there's that. We also have separate allocations, and I'm not going to go into quite so much detail, but we do an allocation based on ML students, what the needs are for ML, and it's ratcheted up based on need, and those allocations are made to each building to make sure we're providing those supports along with ML teachers, which isn't in this mix. Special ed teachers and special ed paras are done in a similar fashion, where we identify what are the needs of the students, what does the IEP say they need for minutes, and then we allocate time, and then we usually take that amount, and the special education pupil services team is really good at rounding that up to provide some cushion to be able to absorb new IEPs that might come up in the first part of the year, or new students that move in. And every year, inevitably, we add more paras partway through the year if those numbers grow beyond the cushion that we kind of planned for. So is that helpful? Answer your question?
Yes, and. Yeah, so it's incredibly helpful. I really appreciate the background on how paras are allocated. I think that's important for everybody to know and understand. If we're looking at a switch to, or a possible switch, which I really like kind of the idea of a 21, 23, 25 and seeing what that means fiscally, I'm also wondering, is there a possibility of looking at what the fiscal impact would be of changing the para allocation?
I mean, we could run those numbers for sure. I will say I don't know that it's going to be a substantive change, because in the regular ed space, those allocations range from maybe 3 paras up to maybe 5 or 6 in our larger schools. I don't have those numbers right in front of me, but I'm kind of going by memory there. And what we're looking for are those, the recess, the lunch, and the classroom supports. I do want to address that doesn't include our enrollment paras. So enrollment paras that were mentioned earlier, those are a separate allocation. And so when we have a building that has, let's say, 3rd grade is capped out at, say, Riverview. I don't know that they are this year, but I know they have been in the past. If they have 3 sections, they get 3 enrollment paras. They get an enrollment para for each one of those sections. So that alone would be an addition of anywhere from, 3 times 7 hours a day. So you're talking about 21 additional hours per day that building gets for that support. If a building only has 1 or 2 sections, it may only be 1 or 2 paras when they're at that maximum capacity. So those are added on a 1-year basis. They are not recurring. So we add them in the year that they're at that maximum, and then those positions go back away, and we reassess those enrollments in each of those grades and sections for the next year, and we reallocate enrollment paras. So our principals will hear this week, they're doing some interviews on Friday for those positions, and they will hear before their interview process on Friday how many enrollment paras are being allocated in each of their buildings. Last year, I think we had 3 buildings that received enrollment paras.
Yeah.
No, if you're.
Just one more very specific point. So if we have a K1 or K or 1 classroom that is at its, sorry, I turned my page. maximum of, thank you, maximum of 25. Okay, so if the classroom is maxed at 25, we can assume that there would be an enrollment para in that classroom.
At this point, first grade in Rib Mountain, based on the numbers we have in place today, yes,
have an
they would
enrollment
be
para in that
receiving an
classroom.
enrollment para for their first grade classroom.
Okay. It's always just helpful to see what it looks like in reality.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. We have, I think, 3 or 4 buildings that are going to receive enrollment paras based on being at those maximums. Statine being one of them, they'll have some.
Sure. You know, it's funny because this topic, I remember having this same discussion 13, 14 years ago, right, when we didn't have nearly the number of issues within the classrooms that we do today, right? It's only gotten exacerbated. And this is one of the many areas that I disagreed with Dr. Williams on. She used to cite the Danielson research. Does that ring a bell to anybody?
Oh, yes.
Class size doesn't matter. That's what she used to tell me. Class size doesn't matter. There's no research that supports student achievement is impacted by having a smaller class size. Logically, to me, it doesn't make sense, but that was the notion at the time, so fine. And maybe it's not just class size. And as I was reading this material and reading the information that was submitted by the Rib Mountain parents, one thing to me, I guess, that is clear is that we're continually, and this is no knock on anybody, we don't have another option, or we haven't had another option to solve these problems other than using a math solution, right? It's all a mathematical problem to us because it's a budget-related problem, enrollment, all that fun things. But it's really a math problem multiplied by a psychosocial behavioral problem. That's the fundamental issue that I think that we're missing in our solutions. And again, this isn't a knock on anybody because these are the only tools that we've had. What we don't take into account is a classroom complexity factor. And whether that is and I'm saying this based on 14 years of conversations with elementary teachers in many, many different venues. Middle of Menards, middle of grocery stores, middle of all places. And the feedback has consistently been, if I had 25, if I had 30 kids that came there every day and were sitting down willing to learn, I don't have a problem. But if I have 20 kids and 2 of them don't feel like being there and aren't learning and are going to run around the classroom and rip art projects off the wall, then we have to evacuate the entire classroom and all this other stuff. They're like, that's a problem. So it's not the 20 versus 25. They're like, I'll take 30 well-behaved kids all day. Because everybody that we see out, right, whether it's in a dental office, whether we're in Target, whether whatever, and you see these kids running around and you're hearing, the parents, oh, little Johnny, don't rip all the items off the shelf. Guess what? Those kids are coming into the classroom the next day. And we have less ability to impact their behavior. We just talked about that the other day with teachers questioning, what can I really do about behavior, okay? So this, and to the Rib Mountain parents, and I'm sure we have other classrooms, somehow we have got to figure out a way to get a process through which we can assess and evaluate classroom needs that is not just mathematical, is where I'm going with this. And I say that because in my day job, I have the same problem. Like I manage many different teams. And my ratio, ironically, for a supervisor to frontline staff averages 1 to 25. However, if I have a team that has ultimate complexity, they're doing many different processes, many different work, they're working with people across the seas, I only have 1 to 15 on those, simply because they need more time. They need more direction day in and day out. We don't, and we're faced with a lot of the same problems, right? It's all budgetary at some point. So going forward, and this is where I think one of the suggestions that I would have, and I've not brought this up before, but I think it would help us, or at least it would help me, if we could look at a staffing model by school and just start by showing what positions are all there for each school. All positions, teachers, paras, custodians, all of it, just to get our bearings around what's there. Because if it comes down to having to cut additional items, we're gonna have to, unless something drastically changes with our budget, I think we're gonna have to start looking at how do we factor in classroom complexity, right? And knowing that a class this year, and if it's first grade at Rib Mountain this year, I'm gonna bet my retirement that second grade at Rib Mountain next year is gonna need that same support, right? It's not gonna get better. So we're gonna have to start planning somehow for this evolution when there's a classroom identified, unless things change drastically in Madison and we can do things differently relative to behaviors. But unfortunately, we don't have a lot of levers to pull.
You know, you hit so many points there, Pat, and talking with some of the parents beforehand, being a high school English teacher for many years, I could handle 25, 30 students in a classroom if they're focused. But if we had an IEP student come in that was a behavioral problem, and that 25 to 30 get blown up very easily. And so it's very important. What I have learned throughout the years and working with elementary people is that those first 3 years are so very important in getting the information, getting the students to understand what it means to be in a classroom, working with others, that pre-K to kindergarten, the first grade. And if we don't do things at those levels, like we're talking about before, if we don't do things with that level, it's just going to keep on going up, and we're going to have, as stated with the community comment, we're going to have a hard time moving students into the IB program, the AP program, and all of that, because it goes upward that way. You can't move students forward if they're not prepared at this lower level. So it's a very important thing, and I think that's really what we wanted as board members, to get this information to all of us, because some of us are new, some of us have been here for a while, some have been advocating, some have been in the classroom. We understand that. So we're here to work together, bringing it together, and not trying to, well, doesn't fit in the budget,
Right.
I get that at home. I said that to my wife, and she said, what are you correlating money here to learning? And I said, no, just relax a little bit. You've been around this for a long time. I said, but we have to balance, and that's what we have to do. And sometimes when you can't balance it, like you were saying with the numbers, then we have to be creative. And then we have to look at some creative ways. So I think I've talked a lot at this moment. And as Pat says, guys, we wanted you to bring this forward. We were ready for a lot of question answers and getting this in front of us. And so it's nothing that you haven't been prepared for. So I appreciate the fact that they put this together.
Just one other point, Jim, and it goes to some of the comments I've seen online that people have sent to me regarding potential referendums. Because referendums, in my opinion, we have to assign what the money's for, right? But really it's, at the end of the day, it's going to allow us to do things additionally that we can't do under the current constraints, right? And one of the teachers that I spoke to, this was a number of years ago, and she said, the interesting part when referendums come up and everybody thinks, well, this doesn't impact me, this doesn't impact me. She made a point which I thought was fantastic. She said that when we have these scenarios, regardless of the class size, but when you have a class that has behavioral issues in it, whether it's 1, 2, 3, whatever, the teacher focuses on 80% of their time on 1, 2, 3, or 4, whatever the behavioral issues are, right? So they're not going to have to allocate time or they don't have the time to allocate one-on-one with the rest of the kids. Well, you have the kids that are at the upper end of that are going to go on to AP and IB that frankly don't need a lot of direction from their teacher. They're going to be just fine too. It's the 80% in the middle that are really getting hurt. And somehow that gets lost. So when referendums come up and people look at it, and I'm not uneducated city alders aside, people start making comments about, well, that's not going to impact me or that doesn't impact us. It does. It's all of those kids that are especially in the middle of that bell curve of overall student achievement that are impacted by this stuff. So it's not just allotted to special ed, or it's not just allotted to the APs and IEBs and gifted and talented. And you've heard me preach about that for 14 years, that we don't allocate nearly enough on that end of the spectrum. but it's everybody else in the middle that's really getting harmed, because they're the ones who, with a little guidance and a little support in a structured way, in an environment that they can sit quietly and learn, right, are who are gonna do well. They're gonna learn, they're gonna, move on. But unfortunately, some of these classrooms just don't allow it.
I don't want to make it sound like it's a simple solution, because Tabitha has brought before us, I'm saying just add some more people instead of adding sections, right? And then talk about it for 3 years. But I think sometimes, especially because of being at CISA 9 and hearing what our other, northern districts deal with too, do we have enough people available to fill these positions, even if we have the money to create the positions, right? And usually the answer is barely, right? We don't. Yeah. So.
I need about 40 more before 2 weeks from now.
Yeah. So that's another hurdle for us, unfortunately.
Well, with all that assessment and looking at the, quote, to reduce classroom size, that potentially that could be a recurring referendum of reduction of class size of the Wausau School District, right? Is that something you guys have done before and it was voted down, or has that been a question referendum?
There's never been a referendum directly related to class size, at least since 2012.
I mean, potentially, obviously, you have a lot of great community members here representing the school.
Yeah.
That's something we could talk about or look at. I'm going to propose something, because it's like everybody asks you guys a question, our team here up front, and it's like, oh, they go do like 20 hours of number crunching. It's not a simple request, but it looks like the quote's already started there. I think that's seriously something we can talk about, as you do realize we have, reducing rates of children coming into the district. Well, then if you're able to lock in that classroom size, if there is growth in the future or future consolidation, things like that, well, then now you're locking in that size and you have better education overall moving forward.
Two questions off of that, Nick. Do we prioritize Tabitha? You said we're 40 short. Do we have a prioritization based on classroom complexity, that these are the first jobs we're going to fill?
Yeah, we absolutely do. So the special education positions that we have open currently, the special education department has given us, here's where we're filling first, based on the highest needs within those IEPs and the students that present in those buildings. And we have shuffled people between buildings to ensure that we get a fairly even distribution, so we have supports. But yeah, we still need more.
And Katie or Julie, if you guys went to, maybe you already know, if you went to a principality school, could you say, give me your complex classrooms in ranked highest to lowest? Could teachers tell you that? Because they sure tell me.
Sure. I think between the principal, how you define complexity might look slightly different. Is that behavioral complexity, academic complexity, the combination of both? But I think for certain, there are certain, rooms that provide, whether it's gifted and talented, for sure. I think anyone, any of our leaders in collaboration with our teachers can certainly talk about the complexities in the building in each different classroom. It's just how you define that might look different to some people. If you say, is this room more complex than this room, and maybe what they're looking at, that might be.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's exactly what we need to get to.
This conversation is bringing up a number of my least favorite myths around education. So if I'm up here and I'm doing this, that's probably why. A few things that I think we can all get on board with is it is a real struggle so I'll just say, I don't have students in our district. I've never had students in our district. I have taught in other states. I have been a principal in other states. But I believe very strongly that my quality of life in the city of Wausau directly relates to the quality of education of the students at the Wausau School District. That's why I ran for board. And so anytime somebody says, oh, I don't have kids, I don't have to worry about that, that's probably my least favorite and most annoying thing that anybody says to me. So that's one that tends to come up with this. Another is it becomes really easy for us to do what's called focusing on the edges, right? We can talk about gifted and talented, we can talk about AP and IB, we can talk about students with IEPs or 504s. But this idea that those are the only students who are at risk is nonsense. Every child wakes up with their own set of concerns and needs, right? And they're different tomorrow than they are today, and they're going to be different next week than they are tomorrow. And it's that is the true challenge when you're working with a differentiated classroom, right? Is that every one of your students, whether there's 12, 25, or 30, is coming to that school with their own concerns and needs and issues and good days and bad days. And we ask our teachers to differentiate all of those 9, 10, 15, 29 students every single day. And that is something we all need to make sure we recognize is it's not a problem of the edges or a problem of the middle. It is literally us taking care of every single student to the best of our ability. It also brings up this idea of equity versus equality. And I know that buzzwords get people cranky sometimes. But the needs of a classroom are different every single day, just like the needs of a student are different every single day. And the idea that a straight mathematical equation, as Pat said, is going to give us the answer every single time, we know that's a fallacy. But we also know from a complexity in a systemic situation, we have to have a way to do the best that we can. We have to have a way of looking at the situation that we're in, the students that we have, the needs that they have, the needs of that building, and we have to do it in a way that makes sense and is some degree repeatable, right? Because we can't just look at every classroom differently and today we need 3 teachers and tomorrow we need 2 and next Wednesday we need 5 and we're going to take our para and we're going to put them on a bus and we're going to take them to whatever school needs them today. That's irrational. There needs to be a system, a formula, a complex, maybe, I'm not very good at calculus, so maybe somebody with better math knowledge than I am can help with that. But I wrote down what Pat said when he said classroom complexity factor because I think that's a really interesting way of looking at it. I do think that's going to be a variable that changes a lot, but it is a conversation that we can have. What can we do with our equation, our series of equations, again, not a calculus person, that might help us get more of a flexible, differentiated look, knowing that it's not going to be perfect, knowing that we can't magically make behavior better, knowing that it might work some days and less so others. But these are really good conversations to have, as long as we're all remembering that it's not going to work every day, it's not going to work for every kid, and that we're all on the same team, like kids first.
And I think we've all taken a bite at that apple, letting you know that we are concerned about this, and it is a very important thing that we had the administration bring and put this on the agenda so that everybody here of the 9 have an opportunity to say something and to not just proselytize and all of this type of stuff, but we get it, and we know that you administrative people are looking at this because that's what we pay you to do, and because it trickles down from that point on. I hope you don't take this that we're second-guessing what you're doing. We're kind of throwing our ideas out there as community members as well, and letting you know we're supporting you. Be creative. Take a look at some of these things. Bring that back to the board so that we can move on these types of things. This was on the agenda as an information time, and I knew at that time that there would be a lot of discussion, comments, possible.
One more thing, Jim.
Let me just finish my stuff here. I've got my time here yet. So we really wanted to get you here from Rib Mountain, but you represent also the other schools, the elementary schools that we're concerned about as well. So this really brings it to the board because we can take a look at what we have to solve for you, but we're going to have to solve it for a lot of others as well. And we greatly appreciate the fact that you have come to us, you opened it up, you've listened, you've put things on paper, you've gotten it to us so that we could take a look at it. I just want to commend you for what you and how you've done it and putting this information in front of us. So I greatly appreciate that. All right, Lance, I pass the baton off to you.
Sorry about that, Jim. The timing on the delay isn't
Oh, I get it.
here.
I understand. You're going to have to do this a couple times in the future for me, too.
So just 2 points. One on the fiscal reality slide. That's really just a partial picture because those cuts are, of course, cuts on budgets that were already cut, and sub-budgets that were frozen, and so it's cumulative. I mean, you look at just this year, what we're predicting to be over $10 million short this year just on special ed funding. That money has to come out of our general budget then. We're looking at operating this year, if you adjust for inflation, at like 12 or $13 million less than a decade ago. And we don't make products, we're a service business, so to speak. So 75 or 80% of our expense is compensation. So when you're operating at that low of a funding level, the way you address it is either less staff or pay your staff less. I mean, that happens. It's just the reality. And we've discussed class sizes a lot over the last decade. Pat can attest to this. And we've almost always discussed it in the context of what can we cut so that we don't have to increase our class size guidelines? Because that would be a way to cut budget, would be to increase those class size guidelines. So we've done had a lot of conversations over the last decade trying to avoid that, which has been difficult. And then just one other thing, I agree with Pat that the total number, it's important, but it's not nearly as important as the makeup of the class. Every teacher has told me the same as they've told him, is in the same thing you mentioned, Jim. 1 or 2 students can make a bigger difference than 10 students, depending on who they are. And I really think if administration is going to come back to us, what I'd like them to come back to us and talk to us about, I wish it would include a discussion about, are there more instances where we should be pulling the disruptive students out of those classrooms? And I know that we do want to incorporate those students into those classrooms, but we have to face the reality. Sometimes there's 23 kids not getting educated because 2 are disrupting the classroom. And one way to address that might be to have those 2 students out of the classroom more than they are now. And that's not a fun topic to discuss, but I think it's something that we need to discuss.
And I'm sure Wendy will be able to bring that back to us as well when we're talking about IEPs, and you'll look at that whole package and that. So we do look forward to hearing more of this and looking at some solutions. And before I finalize that, so we can move on, go ahead, Mr. Yang.
So as the newest board member here, obviously there's some things that you guys have done in the past that I'm not privy to, but I do appreciate our Red Mountain family. Thank you for coming here. I want you guys to know that we hear you all. I know that there's been a precedence of how things have been done in the past, but I think being a former educator myself, I think it's important for us to continually just re-examine this. There's a history to all of this, but sometimes when we think about differentiation, times have also changed a little bit too. So thank you for bringing the situation of what's happening at Red Mountain to light for us. I don't think this is an isolated situation with what's happening at Red Mountain. This is probably happening at other schools, so thank you for bringing that to our attention. And that is something that I think is important for us as a board, for us to continue to examine moving into the future. I do have 2 clarifying questions for the both of you. As far as the average class size at the elementary level, given the size of the Wausau School District, how do our numbers look compared to other districts our size? And then the second clarifying question is, as far as future enrollment, as far as class sizes, do we see those class size numbers kind of staying the same, going up or down? What's the projection on that?
I can answer the first question. I did reach out to some districts and they range. So DC Everest puts a max at 22 for kindergarten, but then they don't have a maximum in their 1st grade through 5th grade. They have targeted numbers at DC Everest. There's no policy directly related to a number in those classes. Stevens Point has kindergarten at 22, 1st grade at 24. Rapids has like a goal of 18 and in kindergarten and a goal of 22 in 1st through 3rd grade. If you go to Madison, they have 23 as a cap in kindergarten, 23 in 1st grade, and then they jump to 27 in 2nd grade. And then I have Milwaukee, which is 25, very similar to what we have in kindergarten, first grade is 25. Wanakee, 22 in kindergarten. How many more do you want me to keep going? Okay.
You obviously looked at some other
I
schools.
did.
And
Did
then
that answer your question? Yeah.
And then to answer class sizes over time, we are battling, like many districts, declining enrollment. So I will continue to watch that as the years go on. The last data that I pulled, I think we're down about 90 kids every year since COVID. So it is something that I will just continue to watch, and we'll be able to look at things more specifically by school as time goes on.
I noticed that one of our adjoining districts also, they had a projection was last week, I think Stevens Point is looking at losing 400 in the next 10 years. Are we also looking at that type of a loss, do you think, or?
I would need to look back. I know we had the Roffers report, but I have not had a chance to look to see what our 10-year expanse is. When I talked to you last week, I projected if we lost the 90 every year, that we'll be in the 6,000s in the next 5 years. So it's just something for us to keep at the top of our minds as we are moving forward and making plans.
I think with the declining enrollment, because every student that leaves, we lose funding. That's going to make this problem even more painful next year and the years after that. I like Nick's idea. Oh, sorry.
We all get different microphones. There we go. And no, I like Nick's idea of seeing if we could go with a continuing resolution or a referendum that would continue to fund this, because if we're seeing the trends go down, there's going to come a point at which we're going to have every parent from every school in here saying, what's the matter? We're going to have to, consolidation's inevitable if we can't go and find a sustainable way to keep this going. And Pat, I really liked your input on it. That was fantastic. Thank you.
Right, following up, enough questions. Do you have any last comments to put exclamation mark to it?
No, thank you for listening.
If not, thank you for putting the information together. Thank you for being here, all the Rib Mountain people. I greatly appreciate that. And this does open up the doors as we take a look at the discussion coming up. It was stated in the pilot about the fact that we will be possibly looking at a referendum. It's not going to be in November, but we still have a lot to discuss when it comes to that. That's not something that's done. It almost sounded like it was a done deal. We're just early stages of discussing, correct, if I'm not mistaken, Cale, of a possible referendum. Nothing is final at this point in time. So thank you very much. Greatly appreciate it.
Thank you.
Agenda item 8D, we're looking at Act 89 policies. The board will review the proposed language for the policies regarding Act 89. We turn it over to Ms. Gundrum. Go ahead.
Good evening. I am here to just walk through changes and new additions to 8 of our policies. And before I even get into that, I want to start by addressing something. We had a question come to us because a community member was only seeing 4 policies, but they could see that there was a legal summary that mentioned that there were 8. And so at about 3 o'clock this afternoon, I had an opportunity to finally dig into that. And what I found was, as you can see, they were all posted last week for all of you to access. However, there were some that were uploaded as you had to have a login to be able to see them. So while they were there, and all of you probably could see all of them, when I would look and others looked in administration, we could see all of them. However, they actually were not available for somebody in the public arena to be able to see. That said, I made the switches in that setting when I discovered what had happened, and we'll continue to make sure that we're careful with that. So just in general. So all of them are now visible. You can see all of them there. Just in high-level overview, Act 89 is a piece of legislature that the Wisconsin legislative bodies passed in March of 2026. That law requires a number of things, and it addresses three main changes that we had to include. And the policies with those additions and updates need to be approved by the board no later than September 1st. Those three main things that all of these changes are focused on include ensuring that we've got communication clearly identified in terms of what are appropriate and inappropriate means of communication between staff members, volunteers, and anybody else connected to the school board with students. It addresses an annual training requirement that applies to all individuals that are employed by the school district in any way, shape, or form, as well as volunteers. And then it addresses the reporting timeline. So when we become aware of a violation, what is the timeline for when we have to have those reported? A number of these things will fall under several of our umbrellas, but mine is one of those, as somebody who has to do a number of those reporting pieces and investigation. So there was indeed an overview and things that were loaded so that you could see what that legal summary is. But I'd like to dive in, if it's okay, right into each of the policies, and I can just hit the highlights as to what some of those changes are. And then if you have questions from there.
Is it more terminology?
A lot of it is terminology, but there's some true content, and I'm going to spend more of the time focused on the actual core content that changes so that you can see where it comes into play. I'm not going to be focused in on, for instance, when they change policy to bylaw. Those are
Thank you.
Those are little nuances
Thank you.
we do not need
I'm
to
just
spend all
kind
of our
of
time on.
condensing this part.
Correct.
Yeah.
So on policy number 1, which is related to board members, really the big change comes on page 3 of the 5-page attachment, where it talks about appropriate discussion with regard to personal communication devices. And in probably 95% of all of these policies, we just absorbed and accepted what was recommended from Neola with very few exceptions. And as you know, that's typically been our process with any policies. One thing I want to note is there was some language that was struck in this first policy, which affects board members. The policy language we struck addresses board members having to use approved communication platforms for any of your communication. And the reason why that one that was struck was on there was because it specifically addresses that it has to be communications that can be reviewed by the district and are available for public record. And as you all know, any communication you have that is connected with in any way, shape, or form to the district is public record, and you are required by statute to maintain any and all of those communications. So that's already built in there, and that's why we struck that item. The rest of that policy is good as is. Moving on to policy, the next trio of policies, but I'm going to ask if you can click on the 3213. Policy 1213, policy 3213, and policy 4213, as you oftentimes see, they go hand in hand with one another. The 1000 series really impacts the district administrator and requirements that he has. The 3000 series impacts our certified staff, and 4000 series impacts our support staff. I'm going to hit on teachers because that is all the same, plus some additional things. The teacher piece, there's one piece that specifically talks about them teaching students, and so that is item D under the standard of care for students. Then when we get to the second page, I want to address, we took out an item that was titled preferential treatment or favoritism. And that was taken out uniformly across all of the policies. It is my understanding that almost all districts that work with our Neola contact, at least, have removed that piece. And the reason why they've done that is because there's no place where that is defined. So any person could say, well, they gave preferential treatment, but it doesn't define what does that need to hit to actually be enforceable. And I think it puts us into a space that's, we're kind of caught without any way of managing that in a reasonable way. And so we believe that the other items that are listed in there under the grooming section, which is new, under the boundary invasion violations, which is modified because that language was there in large part in the past, really cover the things that we're going to be focused in on. I did receive a couple of questions from folks just related to, we struck the first 5 examples that are listed under boundary invasions. It isn't that we struck them, they got moved. So those fell under boundary invasions because that used to be the only section that we had. Once Act 89 brought in requiring us to put in the definitions around grooming, those first 5 items are part of the sheer definition of grooming. And so we just simply had those moved to that other section so that they're in the right spot. Moving on from there, we talk about the communication. This law has made it a statutory violation for any person to communicate using a personal communication device with a student. So what that means is if I am a coach of an athletic team or a club, I am not allowed to use my phone to communicate directly to a student's phone. If I do, I have violated the law. It is that black and white. The reality is we have had a lot of efforts to try to ensure that our staff don't do that already. We put in SportsU as an approved platform for most of our clubs and athletic teams. We have continued to, for 3 years running, tell our coaches and our advisors, you need to use the SportsU app. And if you don't use the SportsU app, the only other options you really have are Google Chat, because we back those up and they can be accessed. SportsU can be accessed, and potentially through IC, but very few of our coaches actually would understand IC enough to be able to use that in a communication way. And it's also a little more complex. So we're going to continue to vet apps and other resources to allow for the communication, because obviously a kid needs to be able to tell a coach, hey, I'm going to be late for practice, but they cannot text a coach that information on the coach's cell phone, because they're going to put that coach in a position where they are potentially violating statute. And so this is a huge education piece, not just for our staff, but also for our students, so that they understand and don't inadvertently put our staff in a poor place.
What are we using right now? Texting, I understand that, and I think we all understand that. That can become a real problem. But for many years, coaches have been doing this, and now they're realizing you don't want to put yourself in that type of situation where you can be accused of doing something, because on texting, it's not necessarily kept. But there are apps out there, and I know a lot of schools have gone to this app in central Wisconsin, where the app keeps track of everything that is stated. Is that one
That's
that we
SportsU.
That's okay.
Yeah,
we do have
it's
the
one of many. There are multiple.
Many of them, yes. But
Yes.
that seems to be the one that most of the schools in central Wisconsin have bought into.
Yes, and they also have a free version that they still have backups available for. So there are a number of districts use that, but there are several others, and we will continue to stay apprised, that's not in my space, but we as a district will continue to kind of assess those apps. And if what we're using and what we currently have adopted is not meeting the need, we're going to have to continue to vet more to ensure that we have an avenue, because the communication does need to happen. We just need to make sure that we're doing it in a space that's appropriate based on the new statutory provision. The practical reality of implementing this particular statute is daunting, to say the least. And as I said, for years we've been asking staff to follow some of these other pieces, like staff cannot have a student on as a Facebook friend. They cannot be in social media contact through Snapchat with any of their students or players or people that they oversee a club for. And I think that is an area, again, it's going to be a heavy lift to get all of that cleaned up, because over time that has happened. And it's happened in a lot of spaces.
I'm not sure I agree with it being a heavy lift. It's to me seems so obvious that the coaches should be realizing, don't put yourself into that position. It's not good for them, it's not good for the families, it's not good for the student athlete. I think it would be relatively easy to get this moving forward.
It seems easy, and for 3 years we've been continuing to work on it, and I know that we still have folks out there that hadn't made those switches. So I think the fact that it's against the law now elevates the bar in such a way that hopefully we'll get 100% compliance, because I will tell you, I do not want to be investigating the first situation of violation in this space. So just side note. So moving on through the rest of this, again, we talked about the personal communication devices. When it talks about reporting, which I'm now on like the tail end last page or so, there is communication about mandatory reporting, and a designated administrator / Title IX coordinator is identified in the policy as the person that we would do as an option to communicate. But then also Child Protective Services enters into there, and or law enforcement. So in the district, from a contact standpoint, oftentimes we're contacting our police liaison officers who then kind of help us spearhead those pieces to ensure that we've got the reporting done that we need to have done. If there are violations, the level of discipline is based on the particular situation, so that isn't any different. The annual training, I want to just make a note about. So we actually launched annual training on August 1st for all of our staff members. DPI had told all of the districts, we'll have training for you, but it has not yet been released as of today that I know of. I've still not seen it. Last I heard, they were hoping it would be available by next week, but all of our training always goes out on August 1st. So we utilized a 25-minute video training that was provided by one of our attorney firms that we work with. It happens to be the firm that also helps Neola with policy development. And so we included that in our mandatory training for all new staff, as well as all of our existing returning staff. At this point in time, I think we're at like 30% already completed all of that training, which is great. But we'll continue to ensure that that all happens. The bigger issue for us will be trying to get to all of our volunteers. And so we're currently in that discussion right now as to how do we tap into a couple hundred volunteers in order to ensure that they get the training that's required. Anybody have any questions on any of that so far? Okay. Student supervision and welfare. Again, this is the piece where the grooming language is new. The boundary invasion language was adjusted to move that up. So it's kind of the same You'll see a lot of the same. It's repetitive because we put things in multiple policies. One note about that is they encouraged us to identify the apps that we choose to support, and we have not done that in policy at the recommendation that otherwise every single time that app goes defunct and we have to replace it with a new one or something like that, you would have to then update policy, which would potentially be more frequently than we probably need to for such a simple change. So we just said district supported apps or communication mechanisms. On the policy 7530, it talks about, again, that personal communication devices, so it's added in there as well. Policy 7530 is, one is directed at students, the other one is directed at staff. Again, same thing, how to use it, where to use it. Student technology acceptable use, I mentioned that one. All of that same language, you see it in repeat. Where I want to touch base is on the use of social media, and then the very last two policies. Use of social media, we took out some language and it shifted some language around. Not super substantive beyond what we've already discussed. Copy of volunteers, the volunteer piece, as I mentioned, we've really not had to manage that space. And so we've given them information about not communicating directly with students, but this brings up more rules and guidelines around that. So the training with our volunteers is going to be important. The timeline for reporting is included in the child abuse and neglect policy, which is 8462, and it's the last one in your list. Any reports or any knowledge of any of the child abuse and neglect and sexual misconduct is what was added on this piece, must be reported immediately, and it has to be reported to the Child Protective Services and or law enforcement. In a couple of these spots, it talks about district administrator. We chose that as an option. Know that if it's capitalized D, capitalized A, it means or designee. And so that oftentimes might be a principal or student services or myself or others on the administrative team. The timeline is what I think caught a number of people off guard, and it is also critically important. If we receive a report and it is before the end of a regular school day, we must notify the parent by 5 p.m. that same day. So school dismisses at 3:30 in our elementaries or thereabouts. If we receive a tip about something like this, we have to be in contact with that parent within an hour and a half. Otherwise, we've violated that expectation. If we receive it after school hours, so secondary schools dismiss more like 2:33-ish. If it's any time after that, we are required to notify the parent by no later than noon the very next calendar day. So Friday afternoon, 5 o'clock, we get information. We must contact the parents by Saturday at noon. If we get the tip on Saturday, the 5 p.m. or the noon the next day still applies. So there isn't going to be a space where somebody can say, I'll take care of that Monday when I'm back in the office. That's not a thing anymore with this guideline and this expectation within the statute. And those timelines were spelled out.
I see a lot of covering for administration. I mean, it's going to have to take place because you can't use that anymore. And when I first saw that, I thought, wow, it really goes opposite of what has been done in years past. If it's on a Friday, you can get to the parents by Monday, not disturbing them on the weekend. But no, this really cuts to the chase. So when any of you are on vacation and something comes about, it's gonna be, you guys are gonna have to be doing a lot of communicating with one another yourselves.
Agreed. And I think our district is lucky in that way just because we're a much larger district. So we do have more people that can help in those spaces and those times. I really feel for small districts where they might only have one or two administrators.
gonna be
They're
really
gonna they're gonna have a tougher time.
And I say that only because I understand that.
Yes, you do.
Tabitha, can I just one point of business just for so it's somewhat irregular that the policy is coming to you for the first time in front of the board. But one of the reasons we did that is that based on the September 1st timeline, that if you guys wanted us to come back with more information or if you had questions or concerns that you wanted to, we could place this on the agenda for our next board meeting on the 24th. So it would give some time in between. If there weren't questions or if you felt comfortable moving forward, we can certainly vote on it tonight as well and move on from here.
I guess I'm looking at the board and seeing what you want to do. Vote today? Yeah. Okay. All right, with that, then I'm going to seek a motion. I'm seeking a motion to approve the proposed changes to policies related to Act 89.
So moved.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate the work on that, Tabitha, immensely. Agenda item 9, I'm asking the board if there's any professional growth and development information you want to share with other board members at this point in time. If not, I'm going to move to Mr. Sillers. We'll deliver legislative liaison update, whatever we have.
First, I will share about CISA 9 annual convention was last Monday on the 3rd. So that's why I was not here. Our normal chair, Chris Petroikis from Eagle River, was not able to attend, so me as vice, I got to run the whole show with Al Betry. And we have a new member from the Lakeland area. And want to recognize Larry Schaefer from our DC Everest district, who's been a member on CISA 9 for 4 years, but has served in DC Everest for about 30. So he is taking a break off of that, and so we have a new set of eyes on CISA 9 Border Control now, and I have a packet of the annual reports that I forgot to bring this evening, so I'll make sure we get that dropped off so staff here can look at all the excellent things that Al and his crew are doing. They've added, I think, 6 or 7 more positions to expand services that they're allowed to, offer the surrounding districts. Otherwise, I don't know, to me it's a big thing. Secretary Duffy was in town over the weekend, and I got to speak with him about, we talked about construction things a little bit and how that's going based on the economy, and I told him we really need energy prices to be reduced. I said, because that's affecting construction. Right. We've had a negative jobs number that was released yesterday or today. But otherwise, everybody else is in campaign mode, with our primary being tomorrow. So,
I thank you for your work with CISA 9. I'd like to thank the administrative team for your work with CISA 9. I know playing a leadership role in CISA 9 is very important, and they greatly appreciate. Al is a great administrator and a great ex-individual that worked with us here at the Wausau School District for many, many years as well. So it's good that we're working closely with them. So thank you. Mr. Bushman.
I'm going to read the room, and I'm going to keep it short. Just a couple of things. I want to thank the Rib Mountain families for being here. It's not always easy to come and speak in public, but I think they really are passionate about their kids, and we all want the same thing. We just have to figure out how to work through the challenges and some of the restraints that we have. So appreciate them being here. August 24th is our welcome back for staff. We are having same welcome back that we had last year, where we can gather our teachers together. So we are excited for that to happen certainly excited to welcome people back into the district. We're slowly seeing pockets of students coming back with sports and athletics, but it'll be nice to have everybody back as soon as possible. So,
Is there an invite on that for us? Didn't you invite us last year for that?
I did.
No, I was there. That's why I remember.
It's no accident you didn't get it.
Okay, well, you don't want to see me again.
You're invited. You're invited. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I'd like to have the written board member liaison district activity report and asking that this report be entered into the official record. And with that, I'm seeking a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
7:30.